Stand by. Is this thing on?
Yes, Dan.
Oh, hello.
You're listening to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
This just in.
Breaking news to report.
We are live.
Old newscasters
Can we just say former?
Sure. Former newscasters reunite behind the mic after more than 20 years.
Old news is good news.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to Old News. We look a little different today because we are having our very first used book club. And joining Dan and me today, Jeff Rood, who is my brother-in-law. He's married to my sister Jackie. And this concept came out of, well, I'll let Jeff tell you where the used book club concept came from. Jeff, why don't you take it away?
Sure, yeah. So my wife, Jackie, has a book club here in Madison, Wisconsin. 4 ladies, they get together probably once a month, and they'll have a theme. Like they have, let's taco about it, and they go have tacos and talk about their books.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah.
So she actually had the idea that to have me start reading the books. Well, she had me read a couple books. I was out. I needed one. I grabbed it off the nightstand and started reading, right? So she thought it was hilarious that I was reading these women's book club books, and she had suggested that myself and the husbands, the significant others of the group, should start a used book club. And we could talk about these books from the male point of view, because as we'll probably get into here, most of these are definitely not geared towards me as a demographic. So the used book club was born, and here we are on the podcast talking about it.
Yeah, I loved the concept, and it kind of goes with our brand of Old News, used book club. But I thought, hey, if we can, all bring to the table books that we've read, ones that you've been given to from your spouses or just read on your own, and then I'll bring what I have read at my book club as well, because I get together about every 5-6 weeks with a group here in Pittsburgh, and so I'm going to bring one of those today. So we'll just see what we think, and we'd also love some of your perspective too, our loyal listeners. If you could, in the comments, be sharing books that you love and page turners and books that you just want to get out there and share with fellow readers. That would be awesome if you would participate with us. So,
Carrie, if they're really into the used book club and they do something like the used book club, they should contact us. Maybe they could be on the used book club with us, because there's a lot of people out there with different ideas of books. Like Jeff just said, I'll read a book that my wife read and I'll have a completely different take on it than she does. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of nice to hear the different perspectives sometimes.
Absolutely. Great idea. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yes. All right. Who wants to go first?
Well, Jeff, I want to ask you first, though, do you remember what that first book was that you first read as a member of the used book club? Does it pop out to you?
I think, well, let me say this. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was one of the ones that I want to talk about today. And it was called Verity by Colleen Hoover.
Okay. Did not read that one. Mine was Where the Crawdads Sing, which of course has become a movie now, but that was the first one I ever read after Teresa. That's my wife, and her club meets once a month too, I think, but it seems to be more often sometimes. I don't know. It's something, I can't believe how many emails there are about book club.
Yep.
But I
read that one too. That was another used book that I got to enjoy. So yep.
Yeah. I read that one as well. And we should interject, like, many book clubs, not all book clubs, but sometimes you just want to bring an adult beverage to book clubs. So let's see what everybody brought to the table. What do you have, Jeff?
New Glarus. Moon Man from New Glarus.
Little Moon Man. I have a little.
What do you have?
I am having the last glass of 50/50 Peju that we had on Mother's Day, because we're recording this a few weeks before we air it. So this is a 2018 red wine from Napa Valley. So I thought, well, I'll polish that off. And Dan.
Mine is boring. I have Kroger lemon lime seltzer water mixed with real, Simply lemonade. I mix it together. Oh,
nice.
What is a mixed drink? It's just
it is. I like it.
It's called a mocktail. So
yes.
There you go, mocktail.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm with the kids trend, aren't I?
Yeah, you're very cool.
Not my kids.
Well, I've never been called that. Yeah. No, not your kids. So Jeff, what book did you bring to the table here?
So I brought two. Do you need me to choose one, or how do you want to do this?
Whatever you want to do. Why don't you start with
favorite
one
first?
Yeah. We can always loop back.
Define favorite.
Yeah, the one you actually didn't stop reading.
So I've read them both. So I brought two. One is called, like I said, was Verity. The other one is a book called Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult. I think I'm saying that right.
I read that one too. Yes.
I guess for the sake of this, I think the funnier one would be to talk about Verity. So Verity, this is what I'll give my high level of what I have found with a lot of the books that I have read. If you're familiar with Netflix movies, a lot of these books remind me of Netflix movies. They're incredibly entertaining. They don't take a lot of brain power. And even if there's massive holes in the plot, it's okay. They just plow through, and you just have to look past those to enjoy the book. So I would probably throw Verity pretty squarely in that category. Do you want me to walk through like the basis?
Yeah.
I won't give spoilers,
give us
right?
Yeah, a little synopsis.
No spoilers.
Just no spoilers.
Is it like a romance or what is it?
I would call it more of like a psychological thriller.
Okay.
With some romance, a heavy dose of romance. Heavy skosh of romance on the side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Probably a little more
than
than a
taking
skosh.
notes so I remember when I go to the library.
So it tells the story of a struggling writer, and the book starts off on the streets of New York City. They paint this picture. Struggling writer is walking down the street, and I don't know why I'm laughing. She witnesses this horrible, tragic accident, and somebody dies like right in front of her. I can't, like, gets hit by a car, a taxi, something horrific. She gets knocked to the ground, and in her trauma, she's helped up by the I guess I call him maybe the leading man, the main character of the book. His name's Jeremy Crawford, and he's this incredibly handsome, put together, rich man who happens to be married
blowing
to
in his
Verity.
hair.
Exactly, right? Who is married to Verity, was the name of the book, and that is she is a world-renowned best-selling author. All right, so struggling author witnesses a horrible accident, is helped to her feet by husband of world-renowned best-selling author. Okay. Gotcha. Did I say actor or author? I may have said that wrong.
I think you
said both, but that's
author.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Author. She's a struggling author. Sorry. First podcast, guys.
It wouldn't be right if you didn't screw up, because we do all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So they form some kind of bond and start talking. The husband finds out she's a struggling writer, and he has a scenario, because it turns out that recently Verity has been in a terrible accident and is basically in a coma, living in his house. Now he and the publisher need to figure out a way to get her last unfinished books finished. So he asks, the woman's name is Lowen, if she would consider finishing the books for Verity, because she's a huge fan, right? So to this point, you're like, all right, I can, this makes sense, right? I can see this. She'll get her name on the book, like co-written with, and all that. Then it kind of gets into the Netflix territory, because Jeremy says, I think it'd be great if you moved into our house in rural Vermont, where, by the way, Verity is in her coma. Live in her house so you can really get to feel what she feels and get to know her better, so you can write more like her. And from there, hijinks ensue. Romance happens.
Cats playing with dogs.
Things get a little ridiculous. But again, summer read, good time, enjoyable page turner. Absolutely.
All right.
I actually really love books like that I can get through pretty quickly. I can race through them, and then I'm entertained, and I don't have to think about it too much after that. So I think that's why books like that, when the book club reads them, I'm happy I'm happy to take a shot at them. So
so you'd call
I
that
totally know
a
what you
beach
mean.
read? Should we categorize it as
Sure.
good beach
I
read?
think
Maybe
you could absolutely beach read, pool read. Yes.
any body of water read.
Lake
Okay.
read,
Lake
water
read,
read.
river read.
Pontoon read. Yeah.
There you go.
All right, cool. Do you want to go next, Dan?
Yeah. So, I had a couple, too, but, Where the Crawdads Sing was the first one I did. And so I kind of got sold a bill of goods because that one was a really good book, right? That was kind of fell into that whole kind of formula. Definitely a movie. You knew when you read it, oh, this is going to be a good movie someday.
Yeah, great movie.
And so they made a movie. And then the next book after that was Evicted, which was completely different, which is not really your typical book club book, which is about I don't know if you guys ever read that one, but I'm not going to talk about it because it's basically fact. It's based on housing and terrible housing conditions in the city of Milwaukee.
Oh,
so they read that, and so I read that and was like, hey, this is great. I'm really having a good time on this used book club. I'm going to keep doing this. And so then the next one was called, I don't know if you guys ever read this one. It's called Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride.
Not heard of it. Heaven
Yeah,
and Earth. I'm taking notes.
And it kind of falls along the same lines as what Jeff was just talking about. I mean, it's James McBride is a really good writer, and it kind of follows kind of that formula too a little bit as well. And it's about, it starts off with they find these it's like a murder. It's like a murder mystery inside of a great American novel, so to speak. That's kind of how it's been described. So it starts out where they find these bones in a well, and then that's like in the future, and then it goes back to the 1920s and 30s, and it takes place. I thought of you, Carrie, because it takes place in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, in this area called Chicken Hill. It's a really it's kind of a poor Jewish Black white community in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. It's got about 600 people there. And it's very interesting. The characters, this guy really develops these characters really well, but almost too much at times. You're like, one of those books where you're reading it and you're going, oh boy, here's another character. Oh, here's another character. And you have to kind of keep going back and looking like, wait, who's that guy? Or who's that person? So you kind of get a little bit, at least I got a little bit frustrated early on in the book, like what's happening? Where did the murder go? But then it's really told through the eyes of this Jewish couple. And I'm going to say right up front, I'm terrible at remembering names of characters. So I typically go, oh, it was the guy who owned the theater, or the woman who owned the grocery store. And that's who they were. That they were a husband and wife. They owned the theater and a grocery store in this town. And it kind of revolves around this young girl, Dodo, who she's like an orphaned child. And these people ask the couple that owned the theater and the grocery store to hide her because the state wants to take her and put her into a orphanage, and they don't want that to happen. So the woman, Chona, that's her name, Chona, she does it. She convinces her husband who his name is Moshe, something like that, Moshe or something. I should have gone back and looked. I don't have the book anymore. Yeah, I should have taken notes. So they basically champion this child, and then the whole community at first they kind of look down on them for doing it, but then they all kind of get behind them for hiding this child, and they save her basically from the terrible orphanage. And then eventually it gets back to what those bones were all about. The skeleton at the novel start, it's kind of almost forgotten.
Yeah, I was going to say, I already forgot about the bones. Yeah.
I know. And that's kind of frustrating when you're reading it, like, when are we going to get back to that? When are we going to get back to that? But I thought it was a good read, and it was an interesting part of history. So I always like those.
Historical fiction is probably my favorite genre right now. And so I was happy to hear that you like that as well. And that's what I brought. It is called Take My Hand. And it's by Dolan Perkins Valdez. And she is a New York Times bestselling author. She also wrote Wench, a novel, and Balm, a novel. And I haven't read either one of those, but after reading Take My Hand in our book club, I'm going to go back and read the others. I really liked this author's style. And it's historical fiction in that it's based on actual events of sisters. And their names were... Stand by for my notes. The real sisters.
Oh, you took notes.
A little bit. Mary Alice and Minnie Lee Ralph. And they were a real case. And it was a tragic case in 1973 in American history. These young sisters were surgically sterilized without their knowledge. And the family didn't even really, I mean, it was an absolutely tragic case. And then we learned through this book that it was not an isolated case. So the author looked at that real life case, was reading about it, and wanted to learn more, you know, and it was interesting because I was listening to an interview with her, and she said, I didn't want to tell it through the eyes of the actual sisters because they are still alive and you can hear it from them. Or the attorney who's a main character in this book. And again, he's alive. You could hear it from them. So she was thinking, how can I tell this story in a way that you'll learn about the events and really get immersed in the story? So she created a character. The nurses in the story, there was barely anything written about them. And she couldn't believe there wasn't more written about this topic. So she created a character called Sybil Townsend. And this character is a young African-American nurse. And she ends up, the story goes back and forth. And I do like when we time jump that now we're in the present, now we're in the past, now we're in the present. And you can really see how this whole event and the sisters in the story are her patients, and how she handles when she starts to learn about what is going on in this clinic. You know, she's just, picture yourself, you're young, you're out of school, you want this job, you're doing what you're told, and then she is like, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening here? So she is wrestling. You know, it's a very human story, and I just thought the author developed the character of the nurse so well. I mean, grappling, trying to understand what her superiors are doing, then questioning, and there is just a lot of wrestling in a very human way. So I mean, everybody in my book club was like, oh my gosh, A, I can't believe this really happened in history, and B, I can't believe I didn't know about it. And at the same time, it's a page turner. I mean, just from the pure page turner book perspective, I was like, I whipped through it faster than any book I've read in a very long time. So I highly recommend Take My Hand, Dolan Perkins Valdez. Excellent writing. It's just, she has a writing style that's just like so easy to read. It's just, you fly through it in your mind. So, and it just really painted the picture really beautifully. So I highly recommend that one for anything, whether you're reading it on the beach or anywhere, anytime.
That sounds like a great book. Not like the one, I mean, the one I read, I would say is more the beginning is one of those books where you're getting a lot of information, and you kind of, it's not a page turner, but if you stay with it, it's worth it. So you both had the kind of books that I think are nice. They're easy to pick up. You can read them anytime. The book I read is more one you kind of have to invest in. So if you're not looking for a book to like invest time in, probably don't want to read the one. You want to read the one that Carrie and the one that Jeff talked about.
If you want to invest very little of your soul, read Verity. It's worth.
I'm going to want to learn
every ounce you give in.
Yeah, Perfect. And mine is, if you want to learn something that really happened and have a page turner and witness beautiful writing and really feel this book, I recommend it.
What was did you have a second one, Jeff?
I did have another. I had another one that I read that I actually really liked and got a lot out of. It was called Mad Honey by.
Oh, I read that.
I said it earlier, by Jodi Picoult. Yeah. And that one, it was heavy. That one dealt whereas Verity was kind of, you're like, oh come on, but can't believe this is happening now, but it's super entertaining, and you're like, oh man, I gotta rock this out. Mad Honey, I mean, dealt with some pretty heavy stuff. I won't get into everything because there's some major spoilers in there, but a lot of issues that young people deal with now are present in this book, and they do a really good job, or she does a really good job of making it very relatable, and kind of there was some like, oh man, I never really thought of that this way moments in there. One of the things that's really interesting about her writing style, because I had read another secondhand or used book club book from her called what was it called? It's like the Book of Two Ways. Anyway, it's about these people that are they're Egyptologists, and they like go scour tombs, and they're basically archaeologists, right? And in both of these books, so Mad Honey, the main character, the mom, inherits a bee farm from her father. So she's basically a beekeeper. That's what Mad Honey. She gives honey as gifts. And it's very descriptive about beekeeping. And the one about the Egyptologist is very descriptive about Egyptology. It's like, okay, I know a ton about Egypt now after reading this book. It kind of reminds me of, so I read all of the Tom Clancy books. And if you ever read like The Hunt for Red October, it's like a manual about submarines and how they work and all. It's very deep. So it kind of reminded me of those, which I love the Tom Clancy books. So it was, she definitely does her research and puts, effort into these books. And I thought she did a really good job with that one. I highly recommend Mad Honey. It's not just a, beach, lake, pool page turner. It's pretty heavy. It's got some real life content that I think is, I think as a parent, good to read, good to know.
I agree. And that's one that has really stuck with me. And I, as you both know, have a terrible memory. I mean, it's like I read things and then I'm like, did I read that book? Did I see that movie? Did I like that movie? Are you sure I read that? But that was one that I remember. It stuck with me and my analysis of myself is that it must have struck an emotional chord, because when things like really affect me, high or low, that's when I seem to remember them. And I was really like surprised by some of the things in the plot, and just again, like it's a peek behind the curtain into things I don't know anything about.
I have a book that I haven't read it yet, but this is what the book club, my wife's book club, is discussing this week. It's called The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes.
Know it.
And so I just started, and I have the large print version.
I was going to say, that's a giant book.
It's very nice, large print. But it's about, you'll like it, Carrie, and I'll read it for the next time. But it's about, Sam, I'm teasing for the next one. It's about this program that Eleanor Roosevelt started in the 1930s or I guess the 40s, where they would deliver, these women would deliver books to kind of the hinterlands of Kentucky, trying to get books to people to help educate people out in areas where they couldn't get books. And it's kind of about the, from what I've gathered so far, it's kind of like women doing work that a lot of men weren't real happy about, like going out and doing things on their own and kind of spreading their wings and getting, getting a little bit more independent than some of the men in this southern area liked. And so there's elements of sexism and racism, but also the hope and just the general ecstasy of learning and education. And it so far it's been really, the women are very interesting. I've just read the first quarter of the book, and and there's men too that are very well developed characters, and they're all very strong so far. So you might like that historical period, something to think about.
So is that
Giver of Stars?
Is that historical fiction as well, or what genre does that book fall into?
It is historical fiction. Okay. I mean, it's based on a program that Eleanor Roosevelt really did start back during. I think it's a Works Progress Administration program, or one of those. Wasn't CCC, but one of those programs from the New Deal that they went out and got these people to do some work and help other people along the way. So
Yeah.
very interesting.
Along the lines of the content of that book, I just want to share something in case people are listening and want to bring this to their community, because I just think it's such a great idea. A woman in my book club, Maura, she's got wonderful ideas, and she's on the Library Foundation here in the Pittsburgh area where I live. And they have started a program. So I deliver meals for Meals on Wheels. The library and Meals on Wheels have joined forces. So Meals on Wheels clients can arrange to have us, because we're going to their houses anyway, delivering food. We can bring them library books, because they're not mobile usually. So they, they're homebound oftentimes, or they don't get out as often as they would like. So it's just, I mean, what a great idea, simple to execute. And I'm throwing that out there just so other people can know about it. And if you have questions, you could always call the Peters Township Library, because I'm sure they'd be happy to share, because I just think it's so smart.
That is a great idea.
Isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So are you guys, Jeff and what's your name again? Carrie.
I go by Carrie.
I'm getting old. Speaking of memory, are you guys library? Do you get your books at the library, or do you buy books typically, or what do you guys do when you have your book clubs?
I'm a library girl.
Yeah.
I am a buyer of books.
You're a buyer of books.
Yep.
And do you keep them, or do you pass them on to other people that say, hey, I love the book, give it to somebody else, get it out of the house?
We will share, we will pass. I mean, I was going to have them here. We don't have either book because we've given them to other people. I actually have read several books, and actually series twice. So I have reread books, but I'm not going to reread these. So
beach reads are not rereadable. No. My wife and I, we love the Sun Prairie Public Library, so I'll give a plug for the Sun Prairie Public Library. But these are all books that my wife is a voracious reader, Teresa is, so she should actually be on this more than I should, because she will go through 3 or 4 books in a month. Yeah, and when she starts a book, she does not put it down if it's a good book. Like, she will read it in a day. Where I take like, a month to read a book, because I read before bedtime or whatever.
And then I fall asleep. I'll just read a few pages, and then Aaron will look over and be like, Care, you're sleeping, because the book is on my face.
It's on your face.
Yeah. So that doesn't help speed reading when you're doing it like that. But I also love the Libby app. Do you guys have that in your libraries?
We do.
Libby?
We do.
Yeah, that is the best. And I'll throw it out there again. If you're listening, and just inquire and see if your library has it, because the Libby app, you can get books. I don't like to read digital books on my phone or anything. I like a real book to hold, but I use Libby for the audio, because it's just audiobooks. Tons of them. You can reserve them just like a library book. And then I'll listen to those in the car while I'm doing tasks I don't like,
I struggle with audiobooks. I can't do audiobooks. I stop paying attention, and I space out for 5 minutes, and then and that happens when I read.
Well, I was going to say, I do it reading.
I'll read the same page 3 or 4 times. At least then I can. Yeah. It's easy to just flip back and be like, okay, I remember that part. Whereas on the audio, I haven't mastered that yet. So.
I tend to like more of the I like the self-help books, that genre audio, where, you don't have to plug into every word. You can kind of get the loose concept.
Sure.
Or I do love books when the author reads them, especially funny ones like Tina Fey or Matthew McConaughey. He reads his own. So it's like, then how the inflection, when they're speaking it the way they wrote it. It's like you can hear what was going on in their mind when they wrote the words. So I do like that.
So a friend of mine wrote a book from high school, and he's written a couple of they're basically mystery books. Paul Breen is his name, and they're really good books. But when I read them, I think I have one of them here. It's called Runner's Path by Paul Breen. I'm giving him a plug. But when I read them, I hear his voice. Just cool. Because I know him so well. So when I read them, it's like he's reading it to me. I just hear him.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the other kind of interesting thing is like people like him, he had a whole career and then he became an author after his career and now he's written, I think he's on his third book now in the series. So it's very,
That's cool.
book reading and writing obviously has become so much more accessible to everybody. And you're helping make it more accessible to people through like the Meals on Wheels program that you do, and then more people can publish. So that's what's beautiful about all of this. And I wish I could read faster.
Me too. We'll work on that for 2024.
Yeah.
Speed reading.
I'm like you, Jeff, though. Listening to books is hard for me. And also downloading a book onto like a phone or an app, I have a hard time doing that because I like to, I think I spend enough time at a screen that I like to have the paper,
Yeah.
I agree.
A good old book.
But as long as people
read. I will throw one thing out there for any fellas that are going to be reading books from their wives. Maybe this goes to the wives and to the fellas out there. I used to really not like books written. I'm just going to say this. I used to not like to read books written by women because of how they dealt with feelings and specifically like the love scenes, right? Like I don't need all that. I don't need that perspective, that point of view. It just never really clicked with me. So when I started reading some of these books, either ladies, either give your fella a heads up, or if you want to have some fun with it, don't. Let them know what they're getting into. So I do have one. This is another one. This is one book that no one else wanted to read this one. It's by Colleen Hoover, same Verity, same writer. It's called Heart Bones. Okay.
Yep.
Have you read this?
Teresa's reading that one right now.
Else from her. Okay, so don't know what it was.
I'll sum it up as this. Heart Bones is the story. It's like a after senior year summer romance book between a young lady and a young man. Okay. And multiple times I'm reading, I'm like, why am I?
I've read about this. Yes.
And all of a sudden there's I was telling Jackie earlier, all of a sudden out of nowhere, there's some pretty heavy teen steam going on. And I'm like, I don't need to read this.
Page.
I don't need to read these first encounters from a teenage girl's standpoint, especially when I have a teenage girl. So beware, guys, what you're getting into. I should say anybody, maybe not just guys, anybody that you're getting into, either, give that warning or don't, and have fun with it. See the reaction. Really. Jackie did not give me the warning and thought it was quite funny. So
great advice, though. I mean, and that's what's great about the used book club kind of concept is typically you are getting a book from somebody who knows you pretty well. So if they can give you that heads, like Teresa will always tell me, like a book like that, she'll be like, you're probably not going to like this book as much as I like it. She'll blow through a book like that real quickly, but she'll say there's a lot of teen angst, relationship stuff in this one. You might not like it. I might sometimes, but at least I have that heads up going in. That's good advice. And I will do the same to her. If it's something that's kind of about topics I'm really into, let's say rock and roll or music or something like that, I'll be like, this is a biography about Paul McCartney. You might not really love it as much as I do, but here it is. So yeah, great advice.
All right. Anybody else want to add anything else before we wrap up our first used book club?
Are you going to tease one for next time, Carrie? What are you going to work on for next time?
I am not. We're reading one now that I don't know. I haven't gotten very far with it. Yeah. It is there is a series. I think it's technically on the Discover Channel, but we're reading The Kindness Diaries. So but I'm only 2 pages in because sleeping, the problem I told you about. Sleeping at night. Yeah.
That's what
I'll take
happens
a shot at teasing. I don't know if I'm getting invited back to the next used book
Yes, you
club,
are.
But,
sure. Yeah.
I read, I think my favorite book that Jackie had recommended to me was The Life of Sam Hell. I don't know if you guys have read that one.
We read that in our book club. That's
this goes to, about like people know you. and say, hey, I think you'd really like this, or maybe pass on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie said, hey, I think you'd really like this one. For one, it takes place where I grew up, out in the Bay Area in California. So it was really cool because there was a little bit of history tied in, like kind of happening in the background while the book was happening. That one was really, really good. I really liked that one. So if you want to read that for the next one, it's a good one to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put it on my list right now. Yeah, that sounds like one I would like.
It's
a
really
phenomenal.
good one.
Really liked it.
Mm-hmm. 2 thumbs up for that one. Well, we will list the books that we've talked about today. So if you want to read any of these, and please add your own list under the comments. Please, write what you're reading, some offer page turners or historical fiction or whatever, anything you think that others would enjoy. Please, and share why you like it and why you're recommending them, and then we can get a little used book club going.
Awesome. Yeah, and Jeff, you are now hosting the used book club every time.
That's right.
So.
You passed.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. On that note, I say cheers. Cheers, used book club, mocktails and cocktails.
Cheers.
Until next time, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Old News with Dan and Carrie.
That's old news for now.
Join us next time.